I think to NLP's detriment, they tend to imprint unconsciously on their people this slavish devotion to the dictionary definition of things when talking to other human beings who don't have the same imprint, and get pissed off when a word is not as used as contextually as possible. I'll give you some examples later on. But then you have the structural aspect of the word. NLP also pays attention to that. And when you talk about structure, you're talking about what is the effect of a series of words strung together. In other words, a sentence or a phraseology on the effect on the unconscious mind. What's the structure? How does the syntax affect you? If I say the word imagine, that's a one-word transinduction. If I say once upon a time, that's a three-word transinduction because you're hypnotically programmed. When you hear the words once upon a time, oh, we're going to have a story. Right? But like when we were talking about language patterns yesterday, or the day before, the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. Descriptors before the things they describe forces the creation of exactly the imagery you want, native to the internal environment, whereas if you put the fox that was quick, was jumping over the lazy dog. Right?
The dog that was lazy?
Yeah, the dog that was lazy. See how even though you're saying the same thing, the experience of it is dramatically different. That's structure. But like everything, there's an emotional component that's completely in the background, and yet it contextualizes everything. And that's what you want to think about. What are the psycho-emotional states or halo around the dictionary definition, the structure? That's what's the power. The more abstract it becomes, or the more in NLP and some forms of psychology have what they call levels of abstraction, or logical levels. The higher up it goes, the more power you get over what's beneath it. So if you think about in those terms, you have the dictionary definition, you have the structure, and then you have the emotional association. Is the emotional association conducive to your outcome? Does it set the frame for what you want, how you want that to be interpreted? That's what makes it useful. So when it goes back to one trial learnings, or talking about hypnosis, if we're talking to somebody, do we want them to resist going into hypnosis? We want them to fear going into hypnosis? Or to associate that process in any way with something less than pleasant? If the answer is no, why in God's name will we use examples that lead to a less than positive result in real life? It seems to make a lot of common sense, but nobody seems to think about that because everybody just regurgitates what their teacher told them instead of thinking about the result you want and how can I make it easier? How can I make them want to do what I want them to do? Because we think if we just explain what something really is, that'll automatically make people want to do it or be willing to do it. No, if that were the case, every man in this room would get every date they ask a girl out on. But it isn't. It's because it's all about how you make them feel. In the end, it's all about the feelings. It's all about feelings, emotions, one way or another.
And what's the PI?
Primary intervention. And you can have multiple primary interventions. But the entry point for pretty much all of it, except sometimes, is general and specific negativity. Okay. I was going to write out the whole silo, and I was like, you know what, screw it. I'll just leave it here, and we'll just expand on it as we go. Because the whole silo really is just induce general negativity, specific negativity, primary intervention 1, primary intervention 2, how many ever there are. Future pace, test, exit, test. So you clear out the crap. If you need secondary crap, you clear that out. If there are specific sticking points, you resolve that. You move into your primary intervention, if there is one. Sometimes your specific negativity is your primary because it's cleared and it's done. But if not, then you go into your primary intervention. You test, or once you've resolved it, you future pace how life's going to be from that moment on. You test it to make sure it sticks. You bring them out. You test it outside of trance. And sometimes the test may go out in the street or call me in a couple days and let me know if you're still afraid to go swimming or whatever. You can't take them out right then and throw them in a lake or something.
So, sorry, this question you were doing yesterday. You're saying, or maybe it was the day before, so make them feel really, really good the first session, right? But I do massive extraction work and clearing the first session, and that can get pretty heavy duty. I don't notice any problem.
Neither do I.
Okay, so why do you say that then about? Oh, I guess you're saying like overall just making them feel good, not like I just thought you meant like the first session. In my head was like you're making it really pleasurable.
You make their first hypnosis experience pleasant. So if I've got somebody who's coming in for something that on a scale of 0 to 10 is around a 7 or 8, and I know it's probably going to be more than one session. The first session will be general negativity, specific negativity, maybe direct suggestion, and then exit and see how they do and bring them back for the next session.
Go for whatever they're ready for.
But it depends. If I feel, a lot of times I go right into abreaction. But sometimes, if you know that the odds of clearing it in one session and they're not going to stick around for a long one is kind of in the game, then you've got to need a way to make them want to come back. And so if you scare the bejesus out of them and put them through this 6-hour, shit shoveling session, they'll leave fixed, but I doubt you'll see them again. Your experience may vary, again, because people who come in don't know what to expect in hypnosis. People who are going for energy work, shamanic work, they're a little bit different in terms of they're pretty ready to emote. Some people don't. That's their way up.
You flat out freak them out that you can see energy and read what's going on in their life, and that probably makes it go really deep.
Yeah. Again, if they can relate or they view you as an authority, you can do all kinds of things. But I'm telling you right now, if you don't have the skill sets developed and you're not really sure what they need yet, just make it pleasant. Okay? There's no reason to hit them over the head with a baseball bat if they don't need a baseball bat. A lot of people do regression. They do a very simple technique called the hollow regression. I almost never do. Okay, it's a very simple regressive technique. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. A lot of times it really depends on the issue and who you're dealing with. But trust me, if I'm out in the field, not in the office, but in the field, I'm not going to put somebody through an abreactive process out on the street. Or if I'm at somebody's house. All right? Because if there's other people around, they're going to think I'm doing it to them. Right? But make them enjoy hypnosis. Make them look at hypnosis as something fun, something pleasurable. Now the gate's open. Think strategically. Yeah, we can go in with bazookas and dynamite, and we can eradicate shit. But in the long term, how's that going to help? Because you want them thinking about hypnosis for the first time they come in as, well, when you go in there, they're going to do this to you. Because they're going to talk about your session, right? So think about the ramifications of what you do with people, and then make your decisions. Have I brought people in? I've brought people in on a free consult, and the next thing I know, they're having screaming abreactions because I'm fixing them. As a rule, don't do that. If you don't have to, if it's not appropriate. General rule of thumb, make their first experience with hypnosis extremely enjoyable. And that's cross-contextual. If they're in a therapeutic situation, you have different things you can do. Different rules of engagement. But out on the street, you don't want to be fun. Let me tell you a story. All right? This woman should be shot. My personal opinion. I was doing new curriculum training out in Vegas. And sessions went till about 6, 7 o'clock every night, and then everybody would eat dinner, and then we'd go out and watch a stage hypnosis show, or just slam people into trance in the lobby, or whatever it was we were doing. Well, a bunch of guys.
That's for fun, right?
Yeah. A couple of us got thrown out of the casinos a couple of times. Wasn't me.
You've done that to dealers.
Yeah. But there was a bunch of guys who went to a hypnosis show, and I don't know, she might still be in Vegas for all I know. You might have seen it. And she was a stage hypnotist, and I guess she really did not like men. Because she was her and her little hypno dog. Okay? I heard about this. I didn't see it. I heard about it from people who were appalled. I wanted to hunt this woman down and do vile things to her with a fork after I heard about this. But basically what she'd do is she'd bring a guy up on stage, and he'd be in hypnosis, and the rest of the panel, we'd have women up there, and they'd say, "You're all nurses, but you're really bad nurses." And they would cover the guy, and they would wrap him like in bandages, and then they would pull the bandages off in the most painful way possible. And they had this little dog that I guess he was trained to bark at the people. It was really bad, but basically it was just a horrendous way of utilizing trance and compliance to, I guess, to vent something. And maybe it was funny in the context, but when it was explained to me, and the people who came back were pretty appalled as well. I don't even remember what the woman's name was.
She was an animal trainer.
Was she?
She became a hypnotist. Yeah.
Oh, is that? So you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, I
Then?
don't know her name, but yeah, I know the story.
Yeah, and did I get it even close to right?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So that it's possible that all of her victims would never go to another session of hypnosis.
Now, if you were curious about hypnosis and you saw that show, would you ever go to a hypnotist? Okay? There is some credence to what some, quote, medical hypnotists say about stage hypnosis being bad for the profession. I disagree, but there are bad examples in every crowd. All right? Your first experience with anything, colors, every subsequent experience that you have, bar none. It's the primacy effect. It's universal, and it's important to understand. People will forget what you say, they will forget what you do many times, but they will never forget how you made them feel. Ever. Okay? They may forgive, but they won't forget. So, one of the things that Saul would kind of launch this whole question was Saul was asking me about one trial learnings, or states about one trial learnings, and I realized, and it's in line with something that I kind of remembered that I do a lot of when I'm dealing with people cross-contextually, really, and I really want to kind of hypnotize them without letting them know I'm hypnotizing them, and I call it hypnosis by example. So there's an old concept. Well, it's not really old, but anything that presupposes a trance causes a trance. Okay, if I have you remember a situation or an experience, that's a trance. When you recall the trance, whatever the elements or the characteristics of the state you're in that you're remembering will regenerate. Does that make sense? I'll revivify it. One of the other things that we like to do is we like to use metaphors and analogies to give the mind a process to follow, a way to kind of put things in context, but give them, this is what we like to do. So when Seth and I think it was John were working together, we got into this discussion about what if you're working with somebody who's like a chemist and you're going to work within their personal symbology. You really have to know your chemistry if you're going to get too specific. And basically, what I explained to them was, you work within their personal symbology, but you be specifically vague. So, like if you were going to do a general negativity clearing using a chemistry metaphor, because you're working with a chemist, you might say something like, "And you know, as a chemist, that there are certain chemicals that dissolve other chemicals, that dissolve certain things, and you know what those are." And you know that there's certain chemicals that, when added together in just the right way, enhance and become stronger with one another. They like each other. So as you think about going through all of these things in your lab, just find the right chemical that dissolves that particular substance and notice how it works for you. Right? Sounds amazingly specific. I have no idea what I'm talking about, but he does. Okay?
Doesn't it make you more powerful then?
Yes.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah, as long as I don't try to get too specific. And sodium chloride will dissolve borax. No, it doesn't work that way, right? leverage what you have, but always think in terms of the process. I had another guy that was, he ran a window washing company. And he was doing great, but he was having trouble. It was during one of the free sessions that I run. And I said to him, because the guy was having trouble, and I just walked up and I said, well, as a window washer that not every solvent is strong enough to dissolve everything, because some of the things on his wall wouldn't come off. And so just reach into your toolbox and find the right disinfectant, because I know that when you're washing windows, if there's a sticker on there or something like that, there are special solvents that'll take that off, where regular water or Windex won't. And he understood that metaphor. And so he reached in, he found his little squidgy bottle, and went, and notice how it comes right off. Right? Think about the process. Be vague enough that they can fit what they already know into the metaphor. I was telling these guys again, also, if I have a computer programmer, someone who works a lot on a computer, on your mouse that you have a recycle button, a recycle bin. And you know how to move things around. So as you look at your computer screen, notice where all the things are that you no longer need, move into the recycle bin. And before you know it, they're sitting there going, and they're moving at 100 miles an hour. And now when you're ready, click empty recycle bin and notice what happens. Personal symbology. Okay? Just start with universal experiences and then avoid going to the level where you imply that you have really detailed knowledge, but enough where they can find agreement with you. Again, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. You've got to find that balance. Does that make sense? That's why it's important to know who you're dealing with. That's why when we were talking about adverb adjective presuppositions, when I was talking about easily, naturally, unlimited, automatically, I added 2 other words to the list. Do you remember what they were?
Naturally?
No.
Simply?
Nope. I did add that one, but that wasn't one. Intuitively? Logically. Why might I have done that?
Because depending on the person, one or the other of those is going to be very powerful.
That's exactly right. The population's pretty evenly divided in people who believe in logic over intuition, and intuition over logic. So logically and intuitively, as you think about what I'm saying, you can realize just how much it makes sense for all the right reasons. Sounds amazingly specific. The fuck did I just say?
Just cancel each other out.
Well, no, they didn't cancel each other out. What happened, in theory, if you look at it from a structural standpoint, well, actually, there's a presupposition there that logic and intuition are diametrically opposed. Tells you about how you think. But anyway.
No, that they're not. Because,
Well, he said they cancel each other out.
well,
Howard kind of joking.
Yeah.
but no, this works both logically and intuitively.
Yeah,
It's that much
and that's
more
the best
powerful.
kind, isn't it? See, and there's your what we call your complex equivalence, which,
They just simply work together.
yeah, exactly. But here's my point.
Easily enough.
If you have a hardcore business or scientific background, and you hear me say logically, you lock on the logically, and everything after that, you're gonna process because you believe in logic over intuition. But if you come from a more subjective, creative side of things, you're going to hear intuitively, and all of a sudden, it's going to intuitively make sense. You're going to process it through your own filters, the way I want you to. Okay? If you happen to be a little balanced, logically and intuitively, this stuff will make sense because it'll work both ways.
The thing is, people who believe in one, the other one does not hit a bullshit filter. It's just meaningless.
Yeah, basically, they just disregard it. They don't argue against it.
Disregard it. I still think logically makes sense too. So why
But
do
you think
wrong?
logically in an intuitive way.
Yeah. Yeah. But if you just went intuitive, like if you add logic in it, not only is it working for all people, but if you have any part of you.
If you have someone,
Aren't I a stinker?
if you have someone who only believes in logic, and you say logically and intuitively, they don't care if it's intuitive or not. It's not they automatically
Then
think
there's
it's
balanced
false.
people.
They just
Yeah,
don't
then there's
care.
people who are, you know.
And they
They
make
know
both.
intuitively that logically it'll work.
Have you figured out that Tara likes to sort by exception?
We don't know anyone else like that.
No. Okay. By the way, the people who know you most in your world are probably the ones most like you. Seriously. It's the magic mirror in effect. Actually, it's another aspect of the magic mirror which we haven't actually talked about. So should I talk about that now or just get back into interventions?
Talk about it.
On the topic now. We'll go.
People running this at home are going, will he ever get to the point? Will he ever finish anything he starts?
They're looping us.
Actually, it is relevant because the emphasis on this particular training was going to be identity work. And we need to understand what I'm about to go into. It's an aspect of the magic mirror. It funnels through the magic mirror, but it's separate from the magic mirror. Okay? Some of you have already heard this before. I don't care. We call it the acceptance, rejection, projection, connection. All one compound phrase. Okay?
That you can logically and intuitively understand.
Actually, yes, because it does make logical and intuitive sense, because it's backed by a lot of studies in metaphysics, psychology, and cognitive behavioral therapy. For all the right reasons. And you know what those are, don't you?
Of course.
See? Okay.
Now,
As you know. All right, let's talk about this, because this is the primary reason why 80% of the people in our life annoy the fuck out of us and won't leave. And we keep seeming to attract more. It's also the reason why the people in our life who we love stay with us. Of all God's creatures, as far as we know, except for maybe the whales and the dolphins, only human beings have the capacity for reflective thought or reflective cognition. In other words, we can in fact have thoughts about our thoughts and feelings about our feelings. We've covered that. However, what also happens is, if you think of our core identity, and I'm not going to debate what that is, but let's just call it our center. Okay? The center of who we are. One little dot. That dot has the capacity to reflect upon itself. In other words, to look at itself. Make sense? And then it has a capacity to make a judgment about what it sees. And then the capacity to reflect upon that judgment and make another judgment about what it sees. This is how your self-esteem and your self-identity are built. Okay? When you come into this world, you're one big, empty hard drive. That's all you are. What you are before you come into this world, we can speculate on. Your early childhood experiences, the first time you experience anything, becomes the hook by which all of your other experiences are connected and judged against. There is no arbitrary, this is good, this is bad, this is love, this is hate. It's not how it works. From the time you're 0 to 7 years old, which is about the time that the critical factor starts to come into existence, is about 6 to 7 years old. So 0 to 5, whatever gets in there, that becomes the foundation. Everything else that's similar gets lumped together. But, so, let me give you a more concrete example. If you are brought into this world, into a loving, well-adjusted family, which I don't know if those exist, but let's say it does. And from the time you come out of the womb, or even before that. You're given the food, the shelter, the love, the affection you need, and you're told that you're loved. 20 years later, when someone tells you to love yourself, you'll get a warm, fuzzy feeling, and that'll be love. Okay? And that'll be familiar. By the way, that's the true definition of love for us, is security. What's familiar is secure. Okay? If you look at every definition of love on the planet, if you just parse it down, there's always that feeling of connection and security at its core. That's our first experience of love. Security, comfort. Everything else is just a small distinction. The brain sorts for what's familiar. If you come into this world and the environment you're brought into, as you're growing up, you get the back of the hand, you said, you made me do that, I only do that because I love you. You're in the presence of people who are arguing with each other. So I'm a drunk, he's going to be a drunk. No critical factor. But that's what's there. That becomes what's familiar. It also becomes what's secure. Because it's what was there first. That becomes the definition for, in this example, of love. 20 years later, you tell somebody they need to love themselves more, that's what they get. Okay? That's the essence of how our shit starts. That's the essence of how family curses like alcoholism perpetuate. Abuse perpetuates. Because that's what's there first. How many of you have ever been in a relationship where you treated somebody exceptionally well and they left for somebody worse? Okay? How many of you have ever been treated badly by someone and said, I only did that because I love you? Right? You all been lucky, right? The reason is people will only stay in a relationship that matches their self-concept. They will only stay in a situation where that is familiar to them. If somebody's used to being treated a certain way and they're treated any other way, they have a choice. It creates tremendous dissonance within them. They either have to change or leave. Most people will choose to leave. Okay? Am I making sense with this? Am I going off the reservation? So, the formative experiences create the foundations of our self-concept. So if we're taught growing up, we're good, we're smart, we're intelligent, we're caring. Those are the voices that we're hearing in our head. Those are the voices that tend to be repeated over time, and they form the seeds of an identity within us. As we reflect upon that identity, we arbitrarily decide if it's good, bad, or not. That creates our worth. So we have identity and worth. We create an identity, we have a value judgment that we place upon it. Okay? We do the same thing with events in our life. But it starts at a fundamental level. So what you wind up, and here's what happens. Mirrors reflect. So as we reflect upon ourselves, we start to do one of several things. A, because this is our internal environment, our internal map of the world, we move through the world relating to people as if they see the same things we do. We act as if they know and feel about us the way we feel about us. And we do, in fact, literally program them how to treat us. Science has proven this. And I'm about to explain that to you. So the people in your life who, remember, polarity is your key indicator. The people in your life who trigger you, positively or negatively, are indications of things going on below the surface at the identity level or beyond, or more superficial, closer to the surface. But this is how our identity is formed. It's formed by our early formative experiences. The first time we're exposed to anything creates the baseline. As we accumulate more and more experiences, we create a definition or a belief about certain things, a model. If it matches, it's familiar, we keep it and it reinforces it. If it's not familiar, we ignore it, we reject it, and we find some place that is more familiar. We unconsciously reflect upon it and establish a arbitrary worth to it. And then we move through the world as it, and projecting that image and that value judgment onto everyone around us and act as if they feel the same way about us as we do. Is that clear? I know I repeated myself, but I want to drive this home. Okay?
People in your life that trigger you. Where do you go with that?
Huh?
You start with people in your life that trigger you.
People in life that trigger you are usually triggering you because they're stepping on the same hot buttons that you trigger in other people. The things you don't like in other people are usually the pain points in yourself. Okay? If you don't like people who are chronically late, chances are there's something in your makeup that's similar or akin to it. Okay? So, where am I going with this? Oh, they did a study. Oddly enough, men talking to women, women talking to men. The study was blind. There were 3 parts to it. You had a population of men. They were given 1 of 5 photos of women in various levels of beauty, attractiveness, for lack of a better word. They were random. They were given 5 different profiles. I think it was 5. I may be misquoting the actual numbers. 5 different dossiers or resumes. Each man in the study was given a picture and a resume. And they were given a telephone and told to call and have a conversation with these women. Based on the picture in front of them and the resume, the men were asked to rate the women in terms of social skills, attractiveness, intelligence, competence, self-esteem, blah, blah, blah. The women who were and again, by the way, this was done both directions. So even though I'm using men to women, it was also done women to men. The results were consistent. Yes?
Are they rating before or after the photo?
After.
Okay.
Men were given the picture and the resume and talking to an anonymous voice on the other end of the phone, which usually wasn't even the same woman they were talking to. It was completely blind. The men were asked to rate the women. The women were asked to rate whether they felt the person on the other end of the phone got them, or had the right opinion of them, evaluated them correctly, really understood them. By and large.
Did the women know the rating they were given?
No.
Okay.
No.
And the profiles matched the pictures? Or
No, they were not. They were completely random. When the woman had an attractive picture and a resume, consistently the men rated the woman on the other end of the phone as being more attractive, more accomplished, more confident, more creative, more everything. When the man was conversing with the woman who was going to inevitably give that rating, she felt that he was perceiving her accurately. If the picture was one with severe appearance deficit, the ratings dropped. When the woman asked how she felt she was being perceived by the person on the other end of the phone, she felt she was being perceived inaccurately, like he wasn't getting her. There was just an extreme mismatch. Same thing, men to women, women to men. It was the same thing. But that's not the best part. They recorded these conversations. They edited out every aspect of this dialogue. All they had, if this was a woman talking to a man, all they had was the woman's dialogue. weren't doing the evaluation. If it was a man doing the evaluation, all they had was the man's dialogue. They played those audios to an independent panel of analysts. The analysts were asked to rate the responses.
That they didn't hear.
No, in other words, they did not hear this, the person asking the questions or the one with the dossier. All they had was the person being interviewed's responses. None of the other dialogue, only snippets. And they were asked to rate this person based on her responses. %, match. Well, I'm exaggerating a little bit. It was almost an exact match. They got the same evaluation of this person as this person based strictly on her verbals. Or his verbals.
And that was all based on the random assignment.
Yes. In other words, the conception, the preconceived idea that this person had about the other person who they did not know, who did not match the picture, caused this person to unconsciously behave in a way that independent judges would evaluate them the same way here. Acceptance, rejection, projection, connection. You're doing this all the time anyway. Okay? People will, in fact, take on the unconscious behaviors that you are projecting based on the internal representation of yourself or them. I didn't make the rules, I just reported.
That reminds me of a study I don't remember, excuse me, I don't remember where I first read it, but it was a really cool one, and it had to do with the teachers and students, and they had the kids in two groups. They tested the kids. Some of the kids tested smart, some not so smart. And then they would tell the teachers in advance, okay, these are the smart kids, these are the not so smart ones. Treat them the same. You know, go in and do your best to treat them the same. And the smarter kids would do better than the not so smart. Then they lie to the teacher, and they tell them the opposite. They tell them the kids...
Israeli military did the same thing.
Yeah, and the exact same thing happened. The kids that had tested poorly started to improve. And again, the teacher's been told to treat them the same, but their unconscious expectation of the results definitely affected the performance of the students.
Right. And you see yourself all day long. You have a reflection inside of you. You have your true core identity, which most of us are out of touch with. You have the reflection, which we tend to begin to identify with. And then you have the value judgment you place on the reflection. Good, bad, deserving, undeserving. And then you take that same reflection, that same value judgment, and you project it out onto the world, and you transmit it neurologically and behaviorally to everyone you meet. Now, how do we fix it? How do we fix it? From inside. John?
State control.
State control? Well, that's a bandage. States fluctuate, right?
What?
States tend to fluctuate.
Well, by the state, if we can control ourselves, I can control what I'm sending out to the other person and how they're going to be receiving it and sending it back.
Sure. Let me ask you, by way of a metaphor, let me ask you a question. Let's say we have something like, the Amazon River. Right? Amazon River is pretty long, pretty big river, huh? And we wanted to affect the river. How would we do it?
At the source.
At the source. The closer we can inject change at the source, the more easily the ripples change as well. Yes, we can control our state. Yes, episodically we can step into a certain persona. But the more close we get to the source where we can install change, the more readily it generalizes easily into everything. Make sense? That's kind of where we're going. Okay, we're kind of working upstream. Okay, are there more direct ways to do it? Sure. But not everybody's going to need that level of intervention. Remember, if they're coming to you for therapy, if they're biting their nails, you don't need to rewrite their entire life history. It may just be a behavior. That's a judgment you're going to have to make. Okay, we don't have to. You just give them the change they came for. However, if there's patterns that keep recurring in their life, and they don't know where any of it started, or they have some seriously, they keep attracting the wrong kind of men or the wrong kind of woman or something like that, then we need to start going back, and we have to start impacting the filtering systems. But in terms of self-work, in terms of looking at the big picture, so to speak, the people who trigger you in your life are there because you called them there, consciously or unconsciously. They're triggering you to signal a polarity within you so that you know where to look. It's the universe's way of being benevolent by annoying the piss out of you. Okay? But most of us don't perceive that as benevolence. They sure as heck don't perceive it as mercy. Okay? Polarity in any direction is an indication of a direction you need to explore at some point. You don't have to. The kicks will just keep getting bigger. The universal nudges will become kicks. And the proverbial safe will fall out of the sky and land on you until you finally get the message. As you become more aware, as you become more perceptive, as you begin to understand the matrix, these things will become, even small things will become significant, and you'll be able to resolve them very, very quickly because you'll know why they're there in the first place. They're there to give you a signal of where to go next. Make sense? Okay. Let's get back to the silo, because now that we understand this, we understand where ultimately we want to end up. Let's kind of put it all together. Okay? The next drill is going to be specific negativity. You guys want to take a 5-minute break, use the restroom? Go. Specific negativity. Now, how does specific negativity differ from the primary intervention? The answer, it doesn't, necessarily. But if you're trying to do prep work and maybe they don't know what the real problem is, or because some of the primary interventions are not blind, you want to preserve the anonymity or reduce the shame factor and let them deal with their stuff, specific negativity can be your primary intervention. Okay? Remember, especially guys, there's a lot of things that we want to fix, but we really don't want people to know. Women tend to be a little bit more open, but anytime shame or guilt come up about things we've done or how we feel about certain things, this is when a blind technique can be really, really useful to get forward movement on the process. Okay? They can be used in that way or just as the overall intervention. It's up to you. This is how I use them. I like to know as much as I need to know. If I'm doing content-based stuff, abreaction to cause, or just regular regression to cause, informed child, chair therapy, and even parts therapy, I need information. I can't work blind and be effective. I need to get information. But whenever possible, these techniques are very effective as well. NLP likes to use blind technique because they take a structural approach. I don't need to know the story of why you're fucked up. I just need to know how you fuck yourself up and fix it. That make sense? Fuck is a technical term, by the way. Okay. The primary intervention that I use, I learned from Mark Cunningham. It's my version of it. Although those of you who had Mark's training will see a lot of similarities. There are one or two tweaks that I use. And actually one tweak I actually got from Steve Pickus. It's called I call it the magic frame. Is anybody here old enough to remember the old style television sets? The ones with the knobs?
Yep.
Where you actually had to get up to change the channel?
Yep.
Or vertical hold and contrast and all that other good stuff?
Black and white?
Yep, black and white. Black and white especially.
Yeah.
So the way this technique works is it's a, I think Mark probably borrowed a lot from NHR and DHE when he created this technique. He's been sitting here watching everybody else get the juice for a while, so I figure it's time.
Build up expectation.
Build up expectation. All right, so what we're going to do is there's two ways you can do this. You can do it as an NLP style intervention or a hypnosis intervention. It's relatively the same process. Since we are learning hypnosis, we'll do it that way. So, how would you like to be tranced out?
Sleep.
Deep sleep all the way down, deeper and deeper with every breath you take, every beat of your heart, Saul. You're just going deeper and deeper down. In a moment, not yet, but in just a moment, I'm going to lift up your head ever so gently, and you're going to go 10 times deeper into this wonderful state of relaxation. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to open your eyes and close your eyes. Each and every time you close your eyes, you're going to relax and go 10 times deeper. Open your eyes. Deep sleep all the way down. Open your eyes. Deep sleep all the way down. Open your eyes. Deep sleep all the way down. Wonderfully relaxed all over in every way. Let's put your head back up just a little bit. You can go 10 times deeper into this wonderful state of relaxation. Mind relaxed, body relaxed, just wonderful. Oh, let me have it. That's right. Just let go. That's right. Deeper and deeper down. Just pretend to go even deeper now. Deeper, deeper relax. That's right. Now, in a moment, not yet, but in just a moment, Saul, I'm going to ask you to do something cool for me. Now, at the beginning of today's session, or the end of yesterday's session, I asked you guys to kind of come up with a list of things that you want to accomplish. Now, there may be something in your life that is less than positive. You may have already dealt with most of them, but let's find something that on a scale of 0 to 10 has maybe an emotional impact of 1 or 2, something that's really kind of innocuous. And what I want you to do is I want you to think of that moment or think of that issue, and I want you to imagine, if you could, that out in front of you somewhere in space is a picture that represents that event. I want you to reach out and I want you to touch it. As you reach out and touch it, I want you to notice where in your body you're holding those feelings. I want you to point to that with your other hand. Perfect. Now, what I want you to do is take both of your hands and trace the periphery of that image so you know exactly how big and where it is. Excellent. Now you can just put your hands down. And now, just like in the old days, we had those old-style television sets. And they had a volume knob and a contrast knob and a vertical hold knob. What I want you to do is I want you to notice along the bottom of that image, there's a frame that might be starting to form, a big black one. It's just coming into existence as I talk about it. And you can make that as big and as black as you want it to be. And as you look at the bottom of that frame, I want you to notice that there's a volume knob and a vertical hold and a contrast knob and all kinds of other dials and switches that we don't need to know about yet. But what I want you to do is, as you look at that picture, I want you to notice the image there. And is it still or black, or is it moving? First impression.
Still.
Good. What I want you to do now, is it in color or black and white?
Color.
Good. What I want you to do is I want you to reach out and I want you to find that contrast now. And I want you to begin to play with the contrast. I want you to begin to make it all the way, white it out completely, and notice if the image gets stronger or weaker in terms of emotional intensity. And then go the other way and see which one makes it the best for you in terms of how you like to do it. Do you want to make it all the way black or all the way white? Which makes it better for you? Black, that's right, good. Now, with this finger, what I want you to do is imagine that there's just like little Sharpie in there that writes in gold highlighter or gold marker. I want you to write across that screen what this movement or what this event in your life had to teach you. What's the lesson that you learned from this? And just write it across the screen. Notice how the emotional intensity is already fading. as you can keep the lesson and let the rest go. Instantly, effortlessly, automatically, it shrinks down, size of a postage stamp, it flows back over the top of your head, nailed into your past, properly filed, and sort of notice how your feelings have changed. That's right. Now what I want you to do is I want you to find another episode or another event in your life that has about the same emotional intensity. I want you to reach out and touch that one. Good. And now I want you to notice where you feel it in your body and draw a frame around it. Trace it with your periphery. That's right. And I want you to play with the contrast and notice which one makes the emotion go completely away. And turn it all the way up. That's right. Make it completely gone. And now what I want you to do in glowing golden letters, I just want you to write what lesson you need to keep so you can let the rest go. Notice how everything begins to shift as you continue to express what you most need to retain, and the rest drains away. And then up and over the size of a postage stamp and nailed into the past. And because I know you're familiar with this technique, Shaw, because I know you're a very fast learner, there are many times in your life when you learn things right away. I want you to just begin to notice how your other than conscious mind begins to sort through all of your life experiences, all of the less than positive events that it's ready to let go that have approximately the same emotional intensity. And as if somebody else is driving the bus, it's like instantly, effortlessly, automatically, there's an image, there's the frame, there's the whiteout, there's the lesson across that screen. It shrinks down, and instantly, whoosh, and then all of a sudden another one, whoosh. Faster and faster. Notice that process picking up speed, taking on a life of its own. And all of a sudden, at some point, when your unconscious mind is absolutely certain of this process, it starts looking for bigger things to play with because it knows right now that it has a process that it can use on everything. And it seeks out the next level of intensity in terms of emotional experience. And it begins to go faster and faster, deeper and deeper. Feel your body just beginning to purge and reallocate those files, deleting the emotional charge, keeping the positive lesson, and letting the rest go. Moving those energies, those images back, into the past, nailed into your past, into the filing place, so you can keep the lesson, let the rest go, and notice how good you feel. And when that process becomes fully automated, fully under autopilot, so that instantly, effortlessly, automatically, now and in the future, anytime you're faced with a less than positive experience, anytime there's a situation that comes up that in the past might have emotionally affected you in any way other than positively, instantly you'll isolate the location. You'll draw a frame around it, big and black. You'll white out the image and drain the emotional charge. You'll instantly write across there the lesson that episode or event has to teach you. The image will shrink and move back into the past where it's nailed back there, where you can keep that lesson so you always have it and let the rest go. That's right. And when you know that's true, you take all the time you need. I know you're a fast processor, but be thorough about it. Allow yourself to enjoy that process. Notice how your body begins to change. And notice how in the future, as you move through the world, anytime you come across a situation or circumstance that might have been problematic for you, that's right. Notice how good that feels. So in a moment, not yet, but in just a moment, I'm going to count from 1 to 5. When I reach the number 5, you're going to emerge from this state, bringing all of these wonderful feelings with you, feeling a clarity of body and mind that only gets better, an ability to use the skills you've already got, plus the knowledge and skills you've attained this week so far, at a level that borders on superhuman, maybe even slightly beyond superhuman. And you know what that is. That's a good thing, isn't it? That's right. Number 1, feel yourself returning to this place we call reality, bringing with you a brand new reality song. A reality where you have even more power, more skill, more ability, and more fun doing this stuff than ever before. You're going to find out that whatever level of pleasure you used to feel when you did these skills before, now you get 10 times the pleasure, 10 times the joy. And every time you get that rush of pleasure, it leaves you wanting more. That's right. Draws you into the future. More skill, more power, more fun for you. That's right. 2, all of my suggestions from me to you, from you to your unconscious mind, are now 10 times more powerful, 10 times more permanent, and 10 times more progressive than ever before. Your life only gets better from this moment on, and any time life tries to throw you a curveball, and life just gets better. 3, always at least 3 answers, 3 solutions, or 3 ways to solve any problem you're faced with. 3 solutions. And your unconscious mind will now easily, effortlessly, automatically generate those 3 solutions in the quickest, easiest, most natural way for you and the good of all concerned. 4. Because obviously, Saul, you made the investment. You've done the work. You've done the drills. You got the skills. You deserve the rewards. And it's true for you now. On the next count, you can emerge from the state feeling like you've had an 8-hour nap, a 9-hour massage. And they were really sexy masseuses, by the way, so you can really enjoy that. Number 5, bring with you all of those wonderful feelings. Head will be clear, ready to rock the house. Number 5, notice how good you feel.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Give him a big round of applause. The process is really quite easy. First thing you have them do, pick something. Now, this is one of the other there's a couple of tweaks to this. I didn't make explicit. I'm going to make it explicit now that I'm going to get into the actual technique. Some of you who've been to my trainings have heard me refer to something called bucket listing. Those of you who haven't, you're about to learn it now. What's a bucket list? Anybody who's seen the movie? Things you want to do before you die, right? I originally came up with this concept. Actually, it was in New Curriculum when Mark was talking about beliefs you knew, beliefs you didn't know. What he would do is he would say, I want you to list every belief, everything you think you believe. Right? And then he would say, now, cross out anything that you haven't had an experience of in the last 30 days. Now rate the rest in order of importance. I started thinking, wait a minute. Order of importance. And that got me to thinking. I'm a very lateral thinker. What's the biggest reason most people don't change? You ever wonder? Besides the fact that they're afraid to. I mean, the self-help industry is... The biggest... How many people want something in their life, they want to make a change, and they buy a book? And if they're lucky, the book has a technique in it. And it tells you exactly how to do it and not just what to do. Yes? No? Nobody's ever bought a book? Okay. How many people have ever tried that technique? It is the human condition that when we have a problem, we seek the most immediate solution to the biggest pain we're experiencing. The problem with that is, A, we buy a book with a technique. We're generally using something we have almost no experience in. We don't exactly know how to do it. And we have no past history of success with it. And we're using it against the biggest, nastiest, most painful thing in our life. So basically, I've got this big brick wall and a BB gun. And the BB gun doesn't have a good sight on it. Okay? This is what most people do with self-help techniques when they have them, is they pick the biggest, nastiest thing that they have no history of success and absolutely no confidence in, other than what the author in the book says it'll do, and they try to tackle the monster. They try to slay the dragon. Flip it. What I would rather do is shoot a canary with a bazooka. Okay? I want to drop the brick wall on the midget. Okay? I know I'm so politically incorrect here, but that's basically what we want to do. So the question becomes, how do we do that? How do we develop within us a system or a method where we can confidently tackle these big, monstrous issues in our life. And the secret is by tackling the tiny issues first. So what do? We take a technique. We take all the things that really bug us about a particular issue. I first started doing this with teaching guys how to be more successful in dating and how to be the romantic hero. And I would say, list everything you've ever wanted to do but were afraid to. Now list them in order of emotional intensity. The thing you're most afraid of is a 10, the thing you're least afraid of is a 1, and anything that you're not afraid of is a 0. By the way, always build the 0 into your... This is called a SUD scale in medical practice. When they have you rate the pain, scale of 0 to 10 or scale of 1 to 10, how bad is the pain? 10 being the worst, 1 being nothing. I go 0 because 1 is still something. Right? So you rate it. When you establish on it. So you list what you want, you look at the emotional intensity, and whatever the highest level emotional intensity is regarding that issue, that's your 10. Take half of that, that's your 5. Half it again, you got your 2.5 or 3 or whatever, and then 0 being the complete absence of the issue, right? You take your technique, you are guided through the technique, so you are not trying to drive the bus and be the passenger at the same time. This is another reason why people fail, especially with hypnosis. When we get into self-hypnosis and things like that, the thing I want you to understand, the reason most people fail at self-hypnosis is A, they're trying to do a hypnotic process as the hypnotist and observe the response and be the client at the same time, which by its very definition negates absorption in the experience. Moron is guilty of that for like 10 years. I'd be sitting here trying to hypnotize. Am I hypnotized? I can't tell. Right? Even with tapes. I'd be listening to hypnotic tapes, right? I'm like, is it working? I can't tell. You don't know. So the fastest way to get really good at self-hypnosis is to actually have somebody guide you into hypnosis numerous times and then remember how it feels. And just go back there. After that, it's just what kind of triggers do you want to link to that, and how do you give yourself the suggestions? Because they're not the same. Going into hypnosis on your own is not the same as self-programming. They're two separate functions. There are efficient ways to do it based on what you're trying to achieve. Okay? If you're trying to achieve physical skills, it's actually better to coordinate suggestions with your breathing. If you're trying to do behavioral stuff, be more confident, things like that, a lot of times it's better to give your suggestions before you go into trance. Okay? The other corollary to self-programming is learning to have faith in the unconscious mind. We do that through timing drills, where we say, I'm going to go into trance for exactly 30 seconds, at which point I will emerge completely relaxed, healthy, happy. Drop yourself into trance, have a partner with a stopwatch, and you time them, and you give them feedback. And you find out really, really quick, your unconscious mind, if you get out of its way, gets really, really good at those simple things. And while it seems like no big deal, it does in fact give you a direct experience of your unconscious mind doing something without consciously willing it. And that's a huge confidence booster. Because you've tested it, you've proven it. You know now that you have something going on instead of theorizing it that you can rely on. You guys have done it, you know. Okay? You're amazed how you can come out within a second or two. Sometimes dead on. 30 seconds, 45 seconds. What are you shaking your head at me for?
It's amazing.
Yeah. Especially the first time they do it, you come out right and it's like, you know, it's a thrill. Some guys didn't want to stop. You know, because I can't stop touching it. But anyway. So what you're going to do is, when you start your magic frame, you start with the lowest level of emotional intensity. You run them through it numerous times. However many, especially at first. But what happens is, because you're being guided through the process, because you're starting with the lowest level of emotional intensity, it's easier for the unconscious mind to win, to gain a history of success. Because remember the bouncer at the bar? No experience. Did it work or didn't it? Well, it's a crapshoot. All of a sudden, small issue, victory. Next time an issue comes up, the bouncer at the gate goes, well, have we dealt with this before? Yeah. Did we win? Yeah. How'd we do it? Oh, we'll do that! It does it again, because now it has more confidence, it has a history, it will more readily engage in the process. Third time comes up, 3 is usually the magic number, but I usually go 3, 4, 5. Same level of emotional intensity, bouncer runs out, what is it? Is it in there? Have we dealt with it before? Yeah. How'd we do it? Like this. Did it work? Yeah. Okay, let's do that. All of a sudden, it starts to become self-referential. Now, I give suggestions for self-perpetuation. But what will happen is, after it reaches a certain number, a certain amount of reps, NLP likes to call it a convincer strategy, it'll start to kind of generalize. I usually walk a move through 1s and 2s and 3s, and then I tell them, and I'll just start to take off. But you give them suggestions, and now it begins. When it knows it can handle it, when it's ready, it goes to the next level, and then the next level, and it takes on a life of its own. Until suddenly, you're dealing with 8s, 9s, and 10s, other than consciously, and the degree of difference from when you started is still, subjectively, 1. But you have a massive history of success that the unconscious mind is relying upon. And so the fear factor when dealing with the unknown or dealing with something like this dramatically decreases. It begins to generalize. Okay? I think Mark was brilliant when he came up with the whole idea of generalizing things. But we still have a tendency to pick the biggest, nastiest, most painful issue of our life and throw a brand new technique at it. When by definition, if it's obviously the most painful, strongest aspect, it's going to be the one that theoretically should be the toughest to change. Unless we apply this approach, in which case it kind of evaporates on its own. But you can still do this process because, again, it's all about confidence and certainty in the technique. And that's what we want to build. If we know we can handle something, we've dealt with similar situations before, aren't we just tend to be much more certain and able to deal with stuff as it comes? Sounds like common sense, but it's obviously not so common. So bucket listing is a really cool way to either do general stuff or very situation-specific stuff. But you sort it, most difficult, challenging aspect, things that have and then half of that is a 5 in terms of emotional intensity or challenge. It could be fear, it could be pain, it could be grief, it could be anything. And we tackle those issues first. We never take on the major problem head on. Unless you're doing abreactive hypnosis, which is a different animal. But we're gonna weaken the surrounding areas. We're gonna loosen things supporting it. We're gonna come at it from different angles. Kind of like Systema. We never come at it head on. Okay? We don't need to, because by definition, head on is the point of greatest challenge and greatest resistance. Does that make sense? So the process, once you've got the bucket listing part down, is very simple. You have them pick one. Doesn't matter, as long as the emotional intensity is the same. You have them reach out and touch it. I got that from Steve. Steve P. likes to say, where is it? Reach out and touch it. Cool. Now you know where it is. He's physically reached out and touched it, which means the meat's engaged too. But now what we want to do is somatically, we want to close the circuit. We want to go from objective to subjective. As you reach out and touch it, where in your body do you feel it? Now we've established a link. Now, changing one changes the other. Whereas before, we may or may not get it. Make sense? Now, take both your hands, trace the periphery of it. The minute they trace the periphery of it, you know how big an issue it is with them. Because most people, the bigger the image, the more intense. Proximity is also an indicator of how strong that factor is. But at this point, it's a non-issue because we're not dealing with modulating the intensity through the size yet. So we trace the image. So now he knows where it is as well. Proprioceptively, we know where it is. All of our channels are going into this one area. Now I want you to put a big black frame around it. Okay? I got a little ahead of myself with Saul, so I had to fade the frame in. But ideally, as soon as they trace the periphery, now put a big black frame around it. At the bottom of the frame, remember those old style television sets had a volume knob and a vertical hold and a fine tune and blah, blah, blah. Reach out and find the contrast knob. And what I want you to do is I want you to turn the contrast all the way up till the picture's completely whited out.
That's the brightness knob.
Is that brightness knob?
Contrast will make it black and white or
Yeah.
all gray.
Yeah, that's what I was told, is contrast will make it either all white or all black.
That's brightness.
Okay, well, whatever works. It's been working as contrast for years, so fuck you, just do it.
Anyone who actually remembered those old TVs.
Yeah. But again, just white out the image. But usually what I do is you have them physically turn the knob. That's part of the secret sauce. Have them physically turn the knob. They're taking control, physically as well as cognitively, of that representation. Anytime you can engage the meat, you're engaging more power. Notice as the image fades out and the emotion disappears, how your body changes. Remember, we want to link these two. Now, with your magic finger, I always call it the magic finger, in glowing golden letters, write what this experience, this event, what lesson it had to teach you, so you can keep the lesson and let the rest go. And a lot of times, depending on what it is, they're writing for a long time, so I throw in there, and the screen scrolls, so if you need more room, just keep writing and it'll scroll for you. When you know you're done, the minute they're done writing, notice how different you feel. All of a sudden, the image shrinks down about the size of a postage stamp. It flows over the top of their head, back into the past where it's nailed. So you can keep the lesson and let the rest go. Everybody has a timeline. And that timeline is subjective. In other words, everybody has a slightly different one. However, there are certain archetypal spatial locations that work for everybody. Behind you is one of them. Anytime you take an image and you put it behind you, you shift it into the past where it becomes no longer relevant unless you have to go back. You have to go back into the filing system and look for it. If it's anywhere beyond the sagittal plane, I think it's sagittal, frontal plane, it's referenceable. You know, it's always kind of in your awareness somewhere, which is why sometimes we can't get past certain things, because there's like something right here, even though I can see around it, there's like an obstacle. Okay? Remember, the unconscious mind perceives energetic phenomena, or these grid phenomena, I call it the grid, as solid objects. So when people say, I just can't get past this one issue, what they're really saying is there's something right here that I've stored, and it won't let me go beyond it. Okay? They're literal interpretations of a subjective experience. Okay? So we move it into the past. And then if we want to begin to generalize, we say, now pick another one that has the same level of emotional intensity. Point to where you see it. Notice where you feel it in the body. Draw a big black frame around it. White the image all the way out. Write the lesson across it in glowing golden letters. Shrink it down. Move it over behind you. Nail it into the past. And then as you go through each progressive repetition, you start leaving out more and more details. You start letting them fill in the gaps more and more and more, until eventually all you're doing is going 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And even then, after that, you let them go even faster till it becomes completely automated. And when they know they're done, they know it's complete. They know it's completely automatic. Raise your finger to let me know. We'll move on to the next part of our session, or bring them out of it, or future pace it. Wherever you're going to go next, you're good to go. Okay? When they tell you it's done, you don't arbitrarily decide they're done. Make sense? Questions? Saul?
I did like it when with me, you did the white to black.
Yeah?
I thought that was...
Yeah, anytime you give them the illusion of choice, and it wasn't an illusion, I mean, because if you arbitrarily decide if whiting it out makes it better, if that doesn't work for them, because some people like to count up, others like to count down. And even though theoretically it shouldn't make a difference, it does for them. So yeah.
Sort of like a double white for me,
Yeah.
because I know the white process.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Shut it off.
There And I could see that actually when he did that. He mentioned I could see him actually relax more when he went to black than when he went to white. So, again, anytime you can give them a choice of how to do what you want them to do, you're going to be better off because it's going to be more native to their environment and it's not arbitrary. They're not feeling like something's imposed on them that doesn't match. Make sense? Okay. So, get partners, bucket list. Remember, start with the easy ones first and then generalize. Pick up speed, automate it, rock and roll.